I exposed my manager for stealing tips, so she got me fired. But she didn't know that I was more than just a pretty face. Now she's learning her lesson in jail. When I was 18, I started working at a cafe, but at first I barely got any tips. And because I thought of myself as really pretty, my ego was bruised. So to get more tips, my clothes got skimpier and skimpier. I started wearing tighter leggings, tied my apron so hard I struggled to breathe, and bought tops that were 2 or even 3 sizes too small. I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until I was getting catcalled multiple times on my way to work. And still, I didn't even care. I just wanted attention and money. But somehow, I was still getting the same, very little, amount of tips. One time, an old man came in and didn't even make eye contact with me because of how much he was staring at my features. And when his meal was done, he promised to leave a pretty thing like me a $30 tip. But when I came back from the bathroom, I saw that he had only given me $2. That was my breaking point. For the first time ever, I decided to talk to the other staff members. All of them told me they noticed the same thing, but didn't say anything because they were scared that they were just being bad waiters. After that, I started paying more attention at work. Whenever someone told me they'd tip me, I told them not to put it in the jar and to just hand it to me. On the first day of doing this, I pocketed over $100. I was packing up with my manager, Ava. At the end of the day, when she checked the jar and said, "Hey, did you put your tips in the jar?" "No." "What? Do you know how little I make off of this shithole? Give me 60%. I refused and told her she didn't even do anything all day, so why should she get anything? And I guess she didn't expect me to stand up for myself, because she immediately stopped talking and silently walked to her car. Well, I figured that was enough to stop her from doing it again. So the next day, I went back to putting my tips in the tip jar. I forgot to say, we all have our own personal one with our name on it. It was very busy, and almost all of the male customers, aka walking money, were doing things that could easily be deemed as SA in a court of law. But lo and behold, at the end of the day, I had received a whopping $10. I was so angry that I almost started crying. I didn't put up with hours of people's BS for $10. And I was literally earning $4 an hour, so without my tips, I was pretty much a cafe volunteer. As the manager got in her car, I asked her what happened to the tips. "You already know the answer to that." She smirked when she said that, and I looked away so she couldn't see the tears in my eyes. "I'll tell the boss," I said, voice shaking. And instead of having any sort of empathy for my situation, or even just driving away, she blackmailed me. "I have contact with every place in town. I can get you blacklisted, little girl." As she drove away, I sat on the sidewalk and just stared into space. And I don't know why I didn't just get a new job, but I didn't. I guess some part of me just hoped it would go away, but it didn't. So for the next few weeks, I continued getting paid $260 for 50 hours of work a week. She thought she held all the cards. She thought she had this perfect setup where a little girl like me could be bullied by a big and mighty Ava. But I'm stronger than I look, and she was about to learn that the hard way. I started making a plan, carefully considering my options and potential consequences. First, I needed evidence. I borrowed my roommate's tiny spy camera, don't ask why Jen had one, long story involving her ex, and stuck it in my bag facing the tip jars during my shift. Then I started keeping a detailed log of every tip I saw customers leave, versus what was in my jar at the end of the day. After a week, I had the proof. The video showed Ava clearly taking money from my jar and everyone else's, stuffing it in her pocket when she thought no one was looking. The difference was staggering. I should have been making at least $100 to $150 a day in tips based on what customers were actually leaving. I was so angry I couldn't even think straight. Despite her threats, I decided to go to our boss, David. He owned 3 cafes in town and only came by once a week or so. I waited until his regular Tuesday visit and asked if I could talk to him privately. In his office, I showed him the video and my log. I explained everything. How Ava had been stealing from all of us. How she threatened to blacklist me. How we were all struggling to make ends meet while she pocketed hundreds of dollars a day that didn't belong to her. "Riley, this is a serious accusation. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding the situation? Ava's been with me for 5 years. She's like family." He sighed. "Look, I'll talk to her about it. But between us, you might want to reconsider this. Restaurant work is tough, and sometimes new servers don't understand how things work." I left his office feeling completely deflated. He didn't believe me, or worse, he didn't care. Perhaps they were in on it together, sharing the stolen tips between them. The thought made me sick to my stomach. The next day, I checked the schedule and found my hours had been cut in half. Instead of 5 shifts, I had 2. When I asked Ava about it, she just smiled sweetly and said, "We need to give hours to people who are team players." That night, I called an emergency meeting with the other servers at my apartment. Barbara, William, Quinn, and 2 others showed up. I told them everything. About the video, about going to David, about my hours being cut. What if we all collect evidence? If it's just Riley, they can ignore her. But if we all have proof and go together, they can't fire everyone. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. We agreed to document everything for 2 weeks, then make our move together. I still had my reduced hours, but at least I had a plan and supportive colleagues who understood my situation. Little did I know, Ava was already planning her countermove, and things were about to get much, much worse. The next morning, I woke up to 6 missed calls and about a dozen panicked texts from Barbara. Everyone's schedules had been changed overnight. Quinn and William had both been moved to morning shifts when they usually worked nights. Barbara's hours had been slashed even more drastically than mine. It was clear what Ava was doing, separating us so we couldn't coordinate our evidence gathering. I called Barbara back immediately. "This is insane," I said, pacing around my tiny bedroom. "She must have overheard us talking or something. She's always watching the security cameras from her office," Barbara explained. "She probably saw us all leaving together yesterday and figured something was up." Great. So Ava was paranoid and a thief. What a winning combination. I spent the next few days trying to come up with a new plan. My reduced hours meant I was making even less money than before. I could barely afford gas to get to work, let alone my portion of next month's rent. Jen kept giving me these concerned looks whenever I skipped meals to save money. On Thursday, I arrived for my shift to find Ava waiting for me by the time clock. She had this fake smile plastered on her face that made my my skin crawl. Riley, just the person I wanted to see. She gestured toward the office. Let's have a quick chat before you start. The office was tiny and always smelled like stale coffee. Ava closed the door behind us and sat in the big chair behind the desk. She didn't offer me a seat. So, she said, tapping her nails on the desk, I've been hearing some concerning things. Several customers have complained about you soliciting tips directly from them. My jaw dropped. That's not true. She held up her hand. I'm not finished. They said you implied the money wouldn't be shared with other staff if they gave it directly to you. That's tip theft, Riley. It's a fireable offense. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're accusing me of tip theft? That's literally what you've been doing to all of us. Careful, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Remember what I told you about getting blacklisted? One phone call, Riley. That's all it takes. I stood there, hands shaking with rage. She was turning everything around, making me look like the bad guy. And the worst part was, I had no idea what to do about it. I'm putting you on probation, she continued. One more complaint, and you're done. Understood? I nodded stiffly and left the office. My whole body felt hot with anger and humiliation. Barbara was at the coffee station and shot me a questioning look. I just shook my head slightly. I'd fill her in later when Ava wasn't watching. That shift was the longest of my life. Every time a customer left a tip in my jar, I watched it like a hawk. But there was nothing I could do to stop Ava from taking it later. I felt completely helpless. After work, I met up with Barbara, Quinn, and William at a McDonald's a few blocks away. We were all exhausted and frustrated. She's got cameras everywhere, William said, stirring his coffee glumly. How are we supposed to get evidence if she's watching our every move? Quinn, who was usually the quiet one, suddenly spoke up. What about getting customers involved? If we could get them to confirm how much they tipped us. It wasn't a bad idea, but I couldn't see how to make it work without looking unprofessional or desperate. Excuse me, sir. Could you please sign this form confirming you left me a $5 tip? Yeah, that would go over great. I think we need to be more direct, Barbara said. What if we just confront her as a group? She can't intimidate all of us at once. We debated various plans for another hour, finally deciding on a multi-pronged approach. Quinn would try to befriend the new busboy, Diego, who might be willing to help us. William would talk to the morning shift servers to get them on board. Barbara and I would try to document the tip theft any way we could without being obvious. The next day, I came prepared. I accidentally left my phone recording audio in my apron pocket during my shift. Not the best quality, but it would capture any conversations about tips. I also made a point of loudly thanking customers when they left tips, announcing the amount so nearby tables could hear. Thank you so much for the $15, sir. That's really generous, I'd say, making sure Ava could hear if she was nearby. By the time my shift was over, I had multiple audio recordings of customers confirming tip amounts. When I checked my jar, there was only $12 total, when I should have had at least $50 based on what people had given me. Progress, but not enough. I needed actual video of Ava taking the money. The spy camera in my bag hadn't worked well enough. The angle was wrong, and the quality was too poor to clearly identify her. That's when I got a text from Quinn that changed everything. Diego's in. He has access to the office when he cleans. Diego, it turned out, had suspected something was off with the tips too. As the busboy, he got a small percentage of the tip pool, and he'd noticed his share getting smaller over the past few months despite the cafe being busier than ever. Our plan started coming together. Diego would help us access the security footage from the cameras Ava was using to watch us. If we could get footage of her stealing from the tip jars, we'd have irrefutable evidence. The next day, I was scheduled for a rare opening shift. Diego met me outside before we opened, looking nervous. I don't know about this, he said, shifting from foot to foot. If she catches me in the office, just act like you're cleaning, I reassured him. That's your job, right? You're supposed to be in there. He nodded reluctantly. The computer password is on a sticky note under the keyboard. Classic Ava, paranoid about people stealing but can't remember a simple password. The morning rush kept me too busy to check on Diego's progress. Around 11, he emerged from the back looking pale but gave me a subtle thumbs up. He'd gotten into the security system and found footage of Ava emptying the tip jars from the previous night. During my break, I checked my phone to find he'd sent me 3 video clips. The footage was clear as day. Ava systematically going through each tip jar, counting the money, taking a large portion, and leaving just a few dollars behind. In one clip, she took $30 from my jar and left me $5. I texted Barbara immediately. We got her. That night, we regrouped at my apartment to review all the evidence. We had audio recordings, the security footage, our logs of expected tips versus actual tips, and even a few statements from regular customers who were willing to confirm what they'd tipped. This is more than enough, William said, looking through everything. She's stealing hundreds of dollars a day from us. But David already brushed Riley off, Barbara reminded us. What makes you think he'll listen now? Quinn had been quiet most of the evening, but suddenly sat up straighter. What if we don't go to David at all? What if we go above him? Above him? Like who? I asked. The owner of the building, Quinn explained. My cousin works in commercial real estate. The cafe doesn't own that space. They lease it. If the building owner found out about illegal activity happening on their property, it was a long shot, but worth trying. Quinn promised to get the contact information for the building owner through his cousin. The next day, I went into work feeling a bit more hopeful. We had evidence, and we had a plan. I could tolerate Ava's smug face for a little longer knowing we were working on taking her down, but sometimes things don't go according to plan. I was halfway through my shift when David showed up unexpectedly. He rarely came in outside his Tuesday visits, so seeing him stride through the door on a Friday afternoon was surprising. What was even more surprising was seeing Ava usher him into the office, pointing at me with an angry expression as they passed. My stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. 20 minutes later, David emerged from the office and called me over. His face was grim. Riley, I need to see you in the office. Now. I followed him, my heart pounding. Ava was sitting behind the desk, looking triumphant. Close the door, David said. Once I did, he turned to me with a disappointed expression. Riley, Ava has brought some very concerning evidence to my attention. He turned his laptop toward me. On screen was security footage of me talking to customers, smiling, accepting tips, and then pocketing some cash when I thought no one was looking. My jaw dropped. That's not, I sputtered. sputtered. It's right there on video, Ava said sweetly. You've been stealing tips from the jar and pocketing them, just like I told David you were. The footage looked convincing. It showed me near the tip jar, reaching toward it, then putting my hand in my pocket, but I knew I had never done that. The video had to be edited or manipulated somehow. That's not real, I insisted. I never stole anything. She's the one stealing from us. David sighed heavily. Riley, I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt, but with this evidence, I'm going to have to let you go. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. You're firing me? Based on this fake video? She set me up. I think it's best if you leave now, David said firmly. We won't press charges if you go quietly. Press charges? This was insane. I was being framed for the very thing Ava had been doing all along. I opened my mouth to argue more, but the look on David's face told me it was useless. Humiliated and furious, I grabbed my belongings and left. Barbara caught my eye as I stormed out, and I mouthed "call me" to her before pushing through the doors. I walked home in a daze, too shocked to even cry. When I finally made it to my apartment, I collapsed on my bed and let the tears come. I'd lost my job, my reputation was trashed, and Ava had won. After about an hour of self-pity, my phone rang. It was Barbara. What happened? She demanded. Ava's telling everyone you got fired for stealing tips. I explained everything through hiccuping sobs, the fake video, the accusations, how David had believed Ava without question. This isn't over, Barbara said firmly. If she can fake video of you, we can prove it's fake, and we still have our real evidence against her. Over the next few days, our little resistance group grew stronger despite my firing. Diego managed to download weeks of security footage before Ava changed the password. Quinn connected with 3 more servers who confirmed their tips had been short for months. William found a former employee who had quit specifically because of the tip theft. Meanwhile, I was frantically applying for new jobs. Ava's threat of blacklisting me seemed to be real. I applied to 4 restaurants and didn't hear back from any of them. I was getting desperate, with rent due in 2 weeks and barely $200 to my name. Then came a breakthrough. Quinn's cousin came through with the building owner's information, a company called Meridian Properties, managed by someone named Thomas Jeffries. We drafted a detailed letter explaining the situation, attached our evidence, and sent it off, not expecting much. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Riley? A deep voice asked when I answered. Yes, this is she, I replied cautiously. This is Thomas Jeffries from Meridian Properties. I received your letter about Sunny Side Up Cafe. I'd like to meet with you and discuss this matter further. My heart leaped into my throat. Yes, absolutely. When? Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at our office downtown. Bring any additional evidence you have. I immediately texted the group chat with the news. We spent that evening organizing all our evidence into a professional-looking presentation. Barbara even printed out screenshots from the security footage with timestamps and labels. The next morning, I dressed in the most professional outfit I owned, black pants and a blue blouse I'd worn for college interviews. I arrived at Meridian Properties 15 minutes early, clutching my folder of evidence like a lifeline. Mr. Jeffries turned out to be a serious-looking man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses. He listened intently as I went through our evidence, asking occasional clarifying questions. This is very concerning, he said when I finished. Theft is obviously illegal, but there's also the issue of tax fraud. If tips aren't being properly reported as income, I hadn't even thought about the tax implications. That made what Ava was doing even worse. Here's what I can do, Mr. Jeffries continued. As the property owner, I have certain rights regarding the businesses that operate in my buildings. I'll schedule an audit of the cafe's operations, citing concerns about their compliance with the lease terms. It wasn't exactly the immediate justice I'd hoped for, but it was something. He promised to be in touch and assured me that if our evidence was verified, there would be serious consequences for both Ava and possibly David. I left feeling cautiously optimistic. At least someone with authority was taking us seriously. 2 days later, Barbara called me in a panic. Riley, someone broke into the cafe last night. The place is a mess, and Ava's saying it was probably you trying to get revenge. What? I nearly dropped my phone. That's insane. I was home all night. I know, but she's telling David you threatened her after you got fired. The police are here taking statements. My blood ran cold. First stealing, now breaking and entering. Ava was systematically destroying my reputation and possibly setting me up for criminal charges. Don't worry, Barbara continued, lowering her voice. William was working late and saw Ava leaving well after closing, around 1 a.m. The break-in supposedly happened at 2 a.m. We think she did it herself to frame you. This was getting out of hand. If Ava was willing to stay to break in, what else might she do? I called Mr. Jeffries immediately and explained the new development. He seemed deeply troubled. This changes things, he said. I'm going to expedite our audit. In the meantime, make sure you have an alibi for last night. If the police contact you, don't speak to them without a lawyer. A lawyer? I could barely afford groceries, let alone legal representation. The walls were closing in and I was running out of options. That evening, I got a text from an unexpected source. Diego, check your email. You need to see this. In my inbox was a video file. When I opened it, I gasped out loud. It showed Ava in the office the day I was fired, hunched over the computer, clearly editing the security footage that she later used against me. Diego had secretly recorded her on his phone through the partially open office door when he was supposedly cleaning nearby. This was it, proof that she had framed me. I forwarded the video to Mr. Jeffries immediately, then called Barbara, William, and Quinn to share the news. We finally had irrefutable evidence that Ava was not only stealing tips, but actively framing employees who threatened to expose her. The next morning, I woke to another call from Mr. Jeffries. I've seen the video, he said. This is far more serious than I initially thought. I've contacted the police about the fraudulent evidence and potential false report regarding the break-in. I've also reached out to David directly. Will that even help? I asked skeptically. David seems to be completely on Ava's side. Let's just say Mr. Chen now understands the gravity of the situation. I've made it clear that if this matter isn't resolved immediately, I'll be forced to re-examine the terms of their lease. That got his attention. 2 hours later, David himself called me. Riley, he began awkwardly. I've received some concerning information information about Ava. I owe you an apology. It seems I was misled about certain situations. That was the understatement of the century. I'd like you to come back to work," he continued, "with full restoration of your hours and position. And there will be some changes in management." I almost laughed out loud. Did he really think I'd just come back like nothing happened after he fired me based on fake evidence without even giving me a fair chance to defend myself? "I appreciate the offer," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "But I'll need some time to think about it. Also, I'd like to discuss compensation for lost wages due to wrongful termination." He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Of course, that's understandable. Please let me know your decision soon." I hung up and immediately called my little group to share the news. We had a long discussion about what to do next. Part of me wanted to never set foot in that cafe again, but another part wanted to see justice served, to walk back in with my head held high while Ava was escorted out in disgrace. Barbara had a practical perspective. "Take the job back temporarily," she advised. "Get your back pay, help establish a fair tip system, then find something better when you can." The next day, I agreed to return to work the following Monday. David seemed relieved and promised that personnel changes would be implemented before then. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. When Monday morning arrived, I dressed for work with shaking hands. Would Ava still be there? Would the other staff resent me for the upheaval? I arrived to find the cafe buzzing with nervous energy. David was actually behind the counter working, which I'd never seen before. Barbara spotted me and rushed over, pulling me into a corner. "You missed all the drama," she whispered excitedly. "The police were here yesterday taking statements from everyone about the tip theft. Apparently, Ava's been stealing thousands of dollars over the past year. And get this, she tried to blame David when they confronted her. Said he knew all about it and got a cut." I raised my eyebrows. "Did he?" Barbara shrugged. "He swears he didn't, but who knows? The important thing is, she's gone. Fired and facing charges for theft and filing a false police report about the break-in. It was almost too much to process. After weeks of feeling powerless and victimized, justice had finally been served. Ava was gone, exposed as the thief and manipulator she truly was. David approached me cautiously. "Riley, could I speak with you in the office?" The same office where I'd been falsely accused and fired. I took a deep breath and followed him. Inside, everything looked different. The desk had been cleaned off, and there was a new computer on it. "First," David began, "I want to apologize again. I should have taken your concerns seriously from the beginning. Instead, I trusted Ava blindly because she'd been with me for years." I nodded but didn't speak. "Second, I've calculated what you're owed in back tips and wages." He slid an envelope across the desk. "This covers what was stolen plus compensation for the days you missed after being wrongfully terminated." I opened the envelope to find over $1,200 in cash. It was more money than I'd seen in months. "And finally," he continued, "I'd like to offer you a promotion. Assistant manager, with a raise to $15 an hour plus fair tip distribution. We're implementing a new digital tip tracking system where customers can see exactly who gets what." I was stunned. "Why me? I've only worked here a few months." David sighed. "Because you were the only one brave enough to stand up to Ava, even when it cost you your job. That's the kind of integrity I want in management." I took a moment to consider. The offer was tempting. More money, better hours, actual authority, but something didn't feel right. "Can I think about it?" I asked. He nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. I spent my shift catching up with the other servers, all of whom seemed relieved that Ava was gone. The atmosphere in the cafe was lighter somehow, with staff joking and customers commenting on the positive change in mood. At the end of the day, I counted my tips, $142, which matched exactly what I'd tracked customers giving me. It felt like a small miracle. As I was leaving, David caught up with me in the parking lot. "Have you thought any more about the assistant manager position?" he asked hopefully. I had, actually. I'd thought about how he dismissed my concerns, refused to investigate properly, and only took action when his lease was threatened. I'd thought about how quickly he'd believed the worst of me based on flimsy evidence. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I think I'll stay as a server for now. I need to focus on my classes this semester anyway." He looked disappointed but nodded. "The offer remains open if you change your mind." I got in my car feeling strangely empowered. For the first time since starting at Sunny Side Up, I was making my own choices based on what was best for me, not out of desperation or fear. The next few weeks were transformative. Without Ava's toxic presence, the cafe became a pleasant place to work. My tips averaged $100 to $150 per shift, exactly what they should have been all along. I cut back on the revealing outfits, finding I got just as many tips when I dressed comfortably and professionally. David implemented the digital tip tracking system as promised, and everyone's income increased dramatically. He also became more present, actually working shifts and getting to know his staff instead of hiding in the office. 1 month after Ava's firing, I heard she'd taken a plea deal for the theft charges. No jail time, but significant community service and restitution payments to all the staff she'd stolen from. Barbara, William, Quinn, Diego, and I went out for drinks to celebrate. As we raised our glasses in a toast, Barbara grinned at me. "To Riley," she said, "who taught us all that sometimes the little girl is actually the strongest person in the room." I smiled, thinking about how far we'd all come. From victims to advocates, from powerless to powerful. And me? I'd gone from a desperate teenager in too tight clothes to someone who knew her true worth, and it had nothing to do with how I looked or dressed. The story could have ended there, with justice served and lessons learned. But there was one final chapter that made everything complete. 2 months after Ava's firing, I was still working at Sunny Side Up. The digital tip system was working perfectly. I was consistently making good money, and there was complete transparency about who got what. My class schedule had gotten more intense, but David was actually accommodating with my hours, which was a pleasant surprise. I was wiping down tables during a quiet afternoon shift when the bell over the door jingled. I looked up and nearly dropped my rag. It was Mr. Jeffries from Meridian Properties, wearing a suit and looking very out of place in our casual cafe. "Riley," he said with a nod, "do you have a moment to chat?" I glanced around nervously. Barbara gave me a curious look from behind the counter. Sure, I replied. Let me just finish this table. We sat in a corner booth away from the few customers who were there. Mr. Jeffries ordered a black coffee, which I brought over before sitting across from him. I wanted to update you personally, he said, stirring his coffee. The investigation into Ava's activities has expanded. It appears this wasn't her first venture. My eyes widened. What do you mean? She's worked at 6 different establishments in the past 8 years. Each time there were financial irregularities that were never fully investigated. We've been in contact with the owners of these places. I wasn't really surprised. Ava had seemed so practiced at her scheme. It made sense that she'd done it before. There's something else, he continued, lowering his voice. David knew more than he admitted. I felt my stomach drop. I had a feeling. Mr. Jeffries nodded. Not the full extent, perhaps, but he was aware that tip reporting was inconsistent. He benefited financially from looking the other way. This confirmed my suspicions about why David had been so quick to dismiss my concerns. He'd been complicit all along. What happens now? I asked. That's partly why I'm here, he replied. Meridian Properties has decided to terminate Sunnyside Up's lease due to breach of contract. The cafe will close at the end of the month. I sat back, stunned. I'd wanted justice, but I hadn't expected the entire cafe to shut down. What about everyone's jobs? What about Barbara, William, Quinn, and Diego? But what about, I started. The staff? He finished for me. That's the other reason I'm here. My daughter is opening a new cafe in this location. She's looking for experienced staff who know the neighborhood clientele. I blinked in surprise. Your daughter? He smiled slightly. Lauren Jeffries. She's been running a successful cafe across town for 3 years. This would be her second location. The bell jingled again, and a young woman in her late 20s walked in. She had Mr. Jeffries' eyes, but a much friendlier expression. She spotted us and walked over. You must be Riley, she said, extending her hand. I'm Lauren. Dad's told me so much about you and your friends. She slid into the booth beside her father and got straight to business. I'm looking to hire a full staff immediately. I'd like to offer positions to you and the others involved in exposing the tip theft. Dad showed me your evidence presentation. It was impressive. That kind of initiative and teamwork is exactly what I need in my business. My head was spinning. In a matter of minutes, I'd gone from learning I was about to lose my job to being offered a new one. What about David? I asked, glancing toward the office where he was probably hiding as usual. Lauren's expression hardened slightly. He's being informed of the lease termination today. My understanding is that he's planning to move to Florida. Something about a fresh start. So David was slithering away without facing real consequences. It wasn't entirely fair, but at least he was out of our lives. I told Lauren I'd definitely be interested in working for her and would talk to the others. She gave me her card with instructions to have everyone call her to set up official interviews. After she and Mr. Jeffries left, I gathered Barbara, William, Quinn, and Diego in the break room and explained everything. Their reactions ranged from shock to excitement. So the cafe is closing, but we might all have new jobs, Barbara clarified. Basically, I confirmed. Lauren seems really professional, and the fact that she already runs a successful cafe is promising. Diego looked relieved. I really needed this job. My mom's medical bills are piling up. We should all call her today, William suggested. Get those interviews set up before anyone else. We agreed to keep the information quiet for now. David hadn't made any announcement about the cafe closing, and it wasn't our place to spread the news. When David finally emerged from his office, he looked pale and shaken. He avoided eye contact with everyone and left early. I guess his meeting with Mr. Jeffries hadn't gone well. The next few days were weird. David barely showed up, leaving us to basically run the place ourselves. Customers started noticing the decline in service and asking questions. We just smiled and assured them everything was fine. I had my interview with Lauren at her existing cafe, the Morning Brew. It was amazing, clean, efficient, with happy staff and a line of customers at the door. She offered me a serving position with more money than I was making at Sunnyside Up, plus health insurance and paid sick days. I accepted on the spot. One by one, my friends texted me with their good news. Barbara got hired as a barista. William was offered a kitchen position with training to become a cook. Quinn and Diego were both hired too. It felt like we'd won some kind of cosmic lottery. A week before Sunnyside Up was set to close, David finally called a staff meeting. He looked terrible, unshaven and bleary-eyed. As you may have heard, he began, Sunnyside Up will be closing at the end of next week. I've been unable to negotiate a lease renewal with Meridian Properties. He didn't mention the real reason for the lease termination, of course. I appreciate all your hard work, he continued mechanically. Your final paychecks will include an additional week's pay as severance. One of the newer servers raised her hand. Is there any chance of transfers to your other locations? David shifted uncomfortably. Unfortunately, I'm selling those locations as well. I'm relocating to Florida to pursue other opportunities. In other words, he was running away from the mess he'd helped create. After the meeting, I overheard David on the phone in his office, his voice raised. I told you I don't know where she is. Ava and I haven't spoken since everything happened. No, I'm not covering for her. Interesting. It sounded like Ava had disappeared. I wondered if she'd skipped town to avoid paying the restitution she owed us. The cafe's final week was chaotic. We ran out of supplies because David stopped ordering. Regular customers were upset about the closure. Some left big tips when they heard we were losing our jobs, not knowing many of us had already secured new positions with Lauren. On the last day, only half the staff showed up. David didn't come in at all, just left a note saying to lock up and leave the keys in the mailbox. Barbara, William, Quinn, Diego, and I decided to have an impromptu closing party after the last customer left. We pooled our tips from the day and ordered pizza. While we ate, we shared our favorite Sunnyside Up stories, most of them from after Ava left. Despite everything, we'd managed to form a tight-knit group. To new beginnings, Barbara said, raising her soda can in a toast. And to karma finally doing its job, Quinn added with a grin. We cleaned up the cafe one last time, turned off the lights, and locked the door. It felt like closing a chapter. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the same building, but it had been completely transformed. The Morning Brew, East Side, was bright and modern, with comfortable seating and local artwork on the walls. The menu was similar to Sunny Side Up, but with higher quality ingredients and better coffee. Lauren had hired a professional manager named Jackie, who was basically the anti-Ava, organized, transparent, and genuinely nice. The tip system was fully digital, with customers selecting their server's name on the tablet when paying. Tips were distributed daily with complete records. On opening day, we were slammed from the moment we opened the doors. Word had spread quickly about the new cafe, and it seemed like everyone in the neighborhood wanted to check it out. I was running between tables non-stop for my entire shift. By closing time, I had made over $300 in tips, my best day ever. The entire staff was exhausted but exhilarated. Lauren ordered champagne and sparkling cider for a toast to our successful first day. I couldn't have asked for a better team, she said, looking around at all of us. Here's to many more days like this one. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a few months, from being exploited and intimidated by Ava to working in a place where I was valued and fairly compensated. The contrast was night and day. About a month after opening, I was serving a table when I spotted a familiar face walk in. It took me a second to place him. It was the older guy who had promised me a big tip and left $2 at Sunny Side Up, the one who had been the breaking point that led me to start investigating Ava. He didn't recognize me at first. I took his order with a professional smile, not mentioning our previous encounter. When I brought his food, he looked up at me more carefully. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? He asked, frowning slightly. I used to work at Sunny Side Up, I replied neutrally. His eyes widened in recognition. Ah yes, the pretty waitress. This place is much nicer, isn't it? I nodded. Much better management too. He looked slightly embarrassed. Well, good for you. The service here is excellent. When he finished his meal, I brought his check. He paid by card on the tablet, and I saw him select a 25% tip. Progress, I guess. One quiet afternoon about 6 months after the Morning Brew, East Side opened, Lauren called me into her office. Riley, I wanted to talk to you about a potential opportunity, she said. Jackie is opening a bakery with her partner, so we'll need a new manager in about 2 months. I'd like you to consider the position. I was stunned. Me? But I'm still in college and I've never managed before. You've shown exceptional leadership skills, she replied. You organized a group of coworkers to expose theft and fraud. You stood up to a manipulative manager even when it cost you your job. Those are exactly the qualities I'm looking for. The irony wasn't lost on me. I turned down David's assistant manager offer because I didn't trust his motives. Now I was being offered an even better position by someone I actually respected. I'd need to adjust my class schedule, I said, thinking out loud. But I could make it work. Lauren smiled. The position comes with tuition assistance. We'd work around your classes. That sealed the deal. I accepted on the spot. When I told my roommate Jen that night, she laughed. Remember when you first started at Sunny Side Up and were squeezing into those tiny shirts for tips? Look at you now, future cafe manager. I cringed at the memory. God, I was so desperate back then. Not desperate, Jen corrected. Just new to the working world. You learned quickly. That was certainly true. I'd learned more about workplace dynamics in the past year than most people learn in a decade. As manager in training, I started shadowing Jackie and learning the administrative side of the business. The work was challenging but rewarding. I discovered I had a knack for scheduling and inventory management. About a week before Jackie's departure, I was going through some paperwork when a news notification popped up on my phone. I nearly dropped it when I saw the headline, "Local woman arrested for pattern of tip theft at multiple restaurants." The article had a mugshot of Ava, looking much less polished than I remembered her. According to the story, she'd been found living in a nearby town under a slightly different name, working at yet another cafe and already implementing her tip-stealing scheme. A customer who had previously frequented Sunny Side Up recognized her and alerted authorities. I immediately texted the article to our group chat with Barbara, William, Quinn, and Diego. Their responses flooded in. Barbara, OMG, finally. William, karma is beautiful, Quinn. Is it bad that this makes me so happy? Diego, she'll actually face consequences this time. I felt a strange sense of closure. Ava had thought she was untouchable, that she could just move on and start her scam all over again. But her past had finally caught up with her. Later that week, I received an unexpected email from Mr. Jeffries. He forwarded me court documents showing that as part of her plea deal, Ava was required to pay additional restitution to all of us. I'd be receiving another $2,000, enough to cover my textbooks for the next year. On my first official day as manager of the Morning Brew East Side, I arrived early to open up. As I unlocked the door, I thought about how different things were from a year ago, when I was desperately trying to make enough tips to cover gas money. Lauren had given me a beautiful notebook as a manager gift. On the first page, she'd written, "Sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the best opportunities. Thank you for standing up for what's right." I set up the tip tablets, making sure each server's name was properly entered. The system was completely transparent. No one could steal from anyone else. As staff started arriving for their shifts, I greeted each person warmly. "Ready for a great day?" I asked Barbara as she tied on her apron. She grinned. "With you as manager?" "Absolutely." I still waited tables occasionally when we were short-staffed, but mostly I focused on running the cafe efficiently and fairly. Our sales increased month after month, and staff turnover was practically non-existent. Sometimes customers from the old Sunny Side Up days would come in and do a double take when they saw me behind the manager's desk, instead of squeezing into too tight clothes for tips. I'd just smile and ask if they wanted to try our special of the day. I never did hear what happened to David after he moved to Florida. Part of me hoped he'd learned something from the experience, but another part suspected he was probably trying the same shady tactics somewhere else. As for me, I eventually graduated with my business degree, with Lauren attending my graduation ceremony and cheering loudly when my name was called. I continued managing the Morning Brew, East Side, and Lauren even started discussing the possibility of me taking over as district manager, when she expanded to a third location. Sometimes I look back on that first job and marvel at how differently things could have turned out if I hadn't stood up to Ava that day. If I just accepted that this is how things are and kept my head down, I might still be there, being exploited and underpaid, or worse, I might have given up on restaurant work entirely. Instead, I found my voice, my confidence, and eventually, a career path I actually enjoyed. And I never had to squeeze into a too small shirt to earn it.